Patriarchy thrives on the unpaid labor of women.
Yeah. And it thrives in spaces where it's not spoken of.
Absolutely.
Hello and welcome back to this episode of Invisible Work. As always, I'm Anjana Appanna, and as always, I bring you a conversation with another mum today. And today, well, let's just say it's going to be cerebral. Because we have with us Dr. Shoma Chakrawarty, who is a psychologist and therapist, and I feel like I already have 10,000 questions to ask her, but she might need me to sign up for, some kind of session. So instead, let me start this off by just asking her about how she is a parent, how she runs this practice of hers, and well, what can she tell us that can make all of our lives so much easier? Hi Shoma, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Anjana. It's really nice to be on this call.
Tell me, how does one scale up in a business like yours, where, the business is as important as what you are doing, in that you are touching so many lives and you're making a difference to someone's life on a day-to-day basis? How do you scale up a business like yours?
So right away, Anjana, therapists are notorious for being very bad with numbers. I mean, there's a whole bunch of us who are always saying, I just want to meet my clients and go to my supervision and do this. I don't want my practice to grow. I cannot tell you how many of us speak that language, so much so that when last week a clinical psychologist, I think from Nimansi, put up something like this on Instagram saying, there are many of us who are like this. The number of Me Too's on the comments was like heartening for all of us who shy away from networking, don't want to push it, but we love what we are doing. We're very content, very happy that we are able to use this space the way we want to. But that said, I mean, ultimately, of course, I've learned these things. It is a business. Mm-hmm. You have to protect your reserves. Mm-hmm. You have to, it's different. Being likable and being marketable are two slightly different things. I'll get to that. And networking, I mean, we are all a little bit, I think, impacted by imposter phenomenon. So we tend to bring in this, there's this bit about how we go to a doctor and we want to feel better the minute the first dose of antibiotics hit, right? Mm-hmm. That sort of a consumer centricness has come into therapy as well. So lots of clients will come and tell you, I have this, I need this, how many sessions will I need? And I think because we are providers and this customer centricity is important to us as well, I think we feel like we have to be answerable to them, even though we know it's not possible. Here 2 and 2 is not 4, right? You can meet a client for a year and then come across something they say and the whole focus of your sessions can change. So I think that thing that, a client will come and say, I don't feel better. Well, we are not essentially here to make you feel better. You're going to feel much worse before you feel better. And this is too much to sort of orient each client to. And I think we are carrying that burden of making ourselves some sort of, proof sort of or evidence sharing of what we are doing. So I think, first of all, orienting, being very clear about your approach. Mm-hmm. What are the things your strengths lie in? Not taking clients that you feel like you're not a good fit for, etc. So you carve out your niche, because once you have that niche, you get to speak about it. And people will know that this is coming from an authentic space. Mm-hmm. The second, really, even virtually, networking has helped so much. And when I started therapy, I happened to go to one networking event before the whole world shut down. It was almost by chance, but that led to a group, and that group led to referrals. And I still don't think I've had a single time when I've had to reach out for clients. It's because the demand is there. You just need to be you need a medium, like you have sites like MindClan or Therapize, which puts people who need you, and the availability of your services has to be at the forefront there. So we can't afford to be too reluctant about networking. Mm-hmm. Networking can feel like, oh my God, I'm a little cringe about it. But there are very sane ways of doing it. There are some pages on Instagram who are doing a really nice job of putting out genuine content out there. But I think all of us feel that sense of, what if it doesn't look good enough? It does not matter. You don't know who will receive your message on a day when they need it. meeting other therapists, even if it's a little deliberate and needs a little effort, getting out in your city and seeing, who's working where, if a conference is happening, showing up there, going back to training because you will meet people there, and that's really how you build this. The other thing that we are also notorious for is for not charging. So beginner therapists who have fairly good training will still be like, 750 is the max I will go. But we are also really engulfed by dentists who've gone and got a training, Reiki masters who've gone and got a training. So there are low ways to assign the status of who is a valid therapist versus all the people who are in this area of helping people. This is a helping profession, but it's a distinct one. You need to have a master's in psychology. As of now, those are the rules. We don't have any licensing like the US does or the UK does. So if you don't set aside and speak about your work and charge, in the way that you should, follow the ethical principles that our work is guided by, confidentiality, privacy, protection from harm, you risk being sort of getting mixed up in that milieu, and then you don't know where your work goes. So your niche, networking, sticking with your basics, going to therapy, supervision, training, these are some key ones to keep your work going. I do think that with these things and a little bit of networking, you will get in touch with circles that are looking for people.
Right.
And another thing about scalability is diversifying your offerings, because one-to-one therapy is very intensive. Like you said, it's very high touch. People's stories stay with you, right? As much as you want to, you will carry some people in mind, and it changes you as a person. I think for me, what it's really done is, one is switching off has to be something you really learn. Your holidays are always planned. Cannot take an unplanned break, because people could just be very new in their intake cycle. You don't want to have an interruption then. And I think my social battery overall has declined. But I think that's not a bad thing, because it's not like I don't have the social capacity. I'm using it in a way where it's most aligned to me. I think it gets used up there with my clients. Whatever I have in reserve, I keep for what I really prioritize in my personal life. But because it is so high touch, I think one-to-one therapy all the time, feeling like I only need to work with this sort of a model, can, one, put a ceiling on your income, because you cannot take an infinite number of one-to-one clients. So if you diversify your teaching into, in your work into, say, teaching or workshops or trainings, there's a lot of demand for things like that as well. Then you have a not so intensive, slightly social, will take you out of home, that sort of a way where you do things that you like. You're actually sending your message out to many more people. It's not as intensive. There's a little breathing space, and I think the best part is it'll take you out of home if you do something like this in a setup here. So.
Right. Okay. You spoke about all of these life coaches that are also online, and they are helping people. You can go to them for a session where they help you realign your
values and
values.
Mindset and growth.
And now you seem to find a dime a dozen of them everywhere, and healers and people who will read perhaps something about you, get a read something, get a certification, and then they're doing these sessions online or even in person. You spoke about how to be a psychologist and a therapist, that you need a degree. There are certain tenets that you have to follow. Do you find that sort of unchecked industry now, especially this concept of a life coach, not a career coach, not a education coach, a life coach? Do you think it's kind of diluting the work you do as a psychologist and a therapist? I'm saying not just you, but across the profession.
I think the risk of it happening is very, very high. That said, again, do we have enough trained psychiatrists and psychologists for the population that needs us? The ratio is abysmal. Very little funding actually ultimately trickles down to the mental health area. Whatever funding, whatever problems were addressed in the 2015 Mental Health Care Act, I don't really know how much has been implemented. So the situation is already very dire. On top of that, there is dilution. sometimes I think that, if somebody needs help, and even if they get someone who would not judge and listen to them, maybe that's the best help that's possible. For instance, a lot of times parishes have their own counselors and people learn pastoral counseling. It would be very immature on my part to say no, everyone can and will and should have access to a trained psychologist. In that case is someone who's got some degree in pastoral counseling, and they will not face a resistance to someone who's a slightly senior person approaching therapy, because it comes down from your church, or it's understood that this is something people do.
Right.
And a lot of times churches are using this sort of a thing even for preventive things, like a premarital coaching package for people who will eventually get married, right? So I think that a model like that, but notice that still is sound and somewhat technical.
Yes.
And it's probably got some supervision because it's happening in a center or a church or a religious body. Problem is, very, very often that sort of advice can lean into advice giving and judging, which can be harmful. But I still think there is some hope there. The problem even more surfaces when, say, we don't know what a life coach does. What does he help you with? Yeah. Right? So is it, marital stuff? Is it health stuff? And this notion of a coach for everything, right? I feel like it impedes growth, because then you're going to become dependent on that person, and the dependency may be exactly what they want because you'll keep going back. As a therapist, my hope is that all of my clients evolve to a space where they don't need me someday, that they move on to their lives and I move on to do whatever else is next for us. But then when you operate only from a business model like that, and that too it's completely unchecked, the risk of harm, because there is still very little real awareness about, what is this thing that I have. Say I know a client, maybe they have schizophrenia. Nobody, including me, can help them. They have to be going to a psychiatrist who will first help them stabilize their symptoms with medicines. It's only at that point that person even becomes amenable to benefiting from psychotherapy. So imagine if they go to someone who's a life coach, it's not going to make any sense. So it's, for the lack of a better word, I feel like it's bogus.
Yeah.
But the way Instagram is and the way social media is, you can really put up boards and say anything today, and you will have takers.
And what social media has done is it has made this sort of pop psychology
very, very popular,
so accessible, and it has given people a chance to feel like they're gaining so much from it, but they are not doing the work to actually allow that message to go in further and for it to sink in a way that leads value for their
because
for the way they
for it
live.
To happen that way, complexity, nuance and pace, these three things about mental health cannot be given to you in a 2-minute reel, 20-second reel, pointing to 5 tips for everything. It just does not work. And I think what it's doing is, even for someone who's actively coming to therapy, it's derailing the process, because you go see that and then you want that. Yeah. And then you try that and you don't feel anything.
Yeah. And some of these personalities online have great personalities,
So the content is super riveting.
Yes.
But then is it really what you need?
Yeah. And so I'm going to repeat that back. Complexity, nuance and pace cannot happen through your social media reels. It has to be worked on and worked with someone who understands these things.
Process, So because clients are not coming to you and simply feeling better from listening to you, right? The way we do therapy, we try to model the consistency that one should have ideally had from their parents. So if a child is feeding every 3 hours, we take that so seriously and we sort of keep mimicking that. And why do we do that? Because the child builds trust like that, and therapy recreates those conditions. And when you have that alliance and you feel like in this relationship I could disagree and the therapist will still be able to be in connection with me, that's what is corrective about therapy that could be missing in our other relationships, and we heal through that. Now you tell me how Instagram, or for that matter AI and these chatbots, how are they going to do that?
Yes.
right? You can sound right, but you're not going to have the tone of voice. You can say everything, you can use the jargon, but it's not coming from a person.
Yeah, actual compassion and empathy
absolutely.
is something that AI clearly doesn't have.
Apparently, the chatbot gets burnout after some point if you keep dumping emotional content on that.
Wow.
I read that last.
That sounds terribly human.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, we spoke about how you deal with a child. So I'm going to now tell people that you have a 1.5-year-old adorable little boy. He's actually almost 2 now, isn't he?
He's 22 months old, bustling ball, climbing, speaking. It's beautiful.
What fun. I feel this is the most fun age.
Absolutely.
As a parent. It only gets crazier from here on. But I want to ask you, what about becoming a parent changed your approach to being a therapist? Did it have a remarkable difference, or how did it feel?
It changed everything about me. Bringing my son into the world just changed everything about me. So I'm sure it changed how I do therapy. But 2 things happened. It made me even more human, and it was extremely humbling. And this is a very, very intentioned, wanted child. That's one. I think we really waited and planned things such that it would sort of be here and now. And typically I tend to be someone who's very problem focused, prepped, etc. But even in the beginning of the pregnancy, I had this feeling that I want to really take time and be present. I don't think, it's not like I didn't read, I didn't prep, but my focus was on enjoying the things that I did like about my life before. So we did travel, I made sure I read lots of poetry, lots of books, really sat down and had conversations with my clients. I informed my clients slowly about my pregnancy after the halfway mark. And you won't believe the amount of warmth, compassion that came back to me, like even within the boundaries. Can I take this session offline for a minute to tell you that I'm so happy for you and whatever. So it's also a job where you really get that witnessing back some way or the other. And so that was that. No amount of any of that preparation prepped me for what was coming. I went almost like 60% into a normal labor, and then we had to have a C-section. So it really derailed my sense of bonding with my son in the beginning, which for, again, who I am, I want to do things with my own hands, and here you are, you can't even lift your baby without someone sort of giving you the baby to feed. But I do want to say, once it got better, it got really, really good. So it took about 2.5 months. And from then on, it's really been like, a big recalibration, realizing that you don't need 100 things to be perfect. Like I said, on the worst of days, we need to be fed, we need to be relatively clean, we need to read, have fun, or meet some family or friends. That's my template for the very bad days. On the good days, we are out and about. We've integrated him into doing all the things we do. So he takes holidays, he goes to the dry cleaners, he goes grocery shopping. So it's pretty much the life we had, but with very little free time. So that's something I would give. I would love to read or train further, which is not a concern now. I feel like I've parked these things for when he goes back to some sort of school, or when he goes to school and I go back to some sort of work outside. The human part of it was to really realize that, one, you are equipped to do this, but the instinct that guides you will not always be held and understood even by those closest to you. So why you want to carry your baby, why you want to not do some things, why you want to do some things, it felt like even at that moment you had to fight for some of those things with people close to you. You realize that the amount of vulnerability it's unleashed is insane. There was something my therapist would always point out, saying, you tend to worry about everyone else's health. How come, you never worry about your own health? And she was very perceptive in how she said that. And I noticed that finally happening with him coming into my life, because suddenly I realized every decision for him that gets made today, this year, next year, has me at the fulcrum. Right? So suddenly, if you imagine that something happens to you, it's devastating even when you just imagine it. That how much someone could depend on you and that's what you want, and that's what's beautiful about it, but that's what is also so vulnerable and scary about it. So I think it's made me an even more deeply feeling, deeply sensing human being. Like sometimes the joy moves you to tears, and sometimes the bites move you to tears. You don't know which it is, but that's probably been the big change.
But there are tears involved at the end of
sure.
it. So, as a therapist who became a mum recently, I'm sure you've thought about this as well, and you've probably spoken about this. But postpartum depression is a real thing, something that wasn't spoken of much for so many years. Do you think now there is a lot more of a spotlight being shown on it? And do you think that India is getting better at dealing with postpartum depression? What can be done to improve the statistics and the situation of expectant mothers?
I'm going to answer that by saying that I still don't know of one person that I've met as a new mum who has felt like the focus in the postpartum phase was on her. If you get what I'm saying,
yes.
Right? So up until birth and delivery, and in great setups, like I love the hospital that I delivered in. The doctors were great. They were very respectful, gave us a lot of choices, etc. But you do feel that, the spotlight shifts very drastically, and it's a very, very short-sighted shift, right? If you look at anything to do with caregiving, if you look at anything to do with emotional labor, you support the provider so the recipient does well. You take care of a family caregiver so the patient who's dealing with cancer does well. And I don't think it could be any more true of mums. Why are we doing, the child, you look at any study, you look at maternal education, maternal health, these are the factors that are the strongest predictors of how children and families do. But somehow after birth, the focus just shifts. You go back to your doctor at 6 weeks once, and then nobody asks you anything except have your stitches healed, right? But you have come undone in a way that is absolutely not known to a typical 35-year-old at this point, because we've spent all our lives chasing goals and now nothing matters, and you're just sitting in one corner of a bedroom feeding and cleaning, and that's all you're doing. So that real fragmentation, the destabilization, I think is enough to bring anyone down. I was reading something which said that this is what happens to refugees, the disembodiment that you feel, right? Like your body is not your own, time is not your own, emotions don't feel like you own them, or even if you do, the child is the focus.
It's a disturbing thought,
it's
right?
Very, very disturbing, and it's very, very, I felt that, and I know enough to know that I had the support, but it was not feeling supportive because of this blip that I felt like I was enveloped in. And now imagine that getting 10 times worse. That could be postpartum anxiety, and that getting many times worse, and that would be postpartum depression. And no, I don't think things are particularly better. I don't think in a country like ours we would even think to offer the mum saying, maybe, you are important, doesn't matter feeding the baby. I think you need medication. In the US, I was reading articles by perinatal psychiatrists. One of them has had a baby herself. She actually upped her dose of SSRIs in the pregnancy, knowing that she already has a history of these symptoms, and a stressor like this would only make it worse, which is what we would normally do for anyone who has a diagnosed condition, right? We would watch for how a transition will impact them.
Preventive care.
But what we want to do here is focus on the baby. Fine, if the mother and the family choose that, right? But here, nobody even thinks that you are worth and valid a choice like that. Maybe there are options, right? But I haven't really heard of any one person accessing help like that very easily. More than that, I have not heard of any mom saying, no, I felt like the focus was on me. People were helping me rebuild myself so I could care for the baby. Most people feel really othered and seconded and doing the groundhog with some varying degrees or levels of support. But imagine someone doing something that big and then feeling unacknowledged and unseen. That's a recipe for disaster. And postpartum depression carries real risks for the mother and child. So I don't feel particularly optimistic about that.
What can be done to improve it? Like, is it enough to just tell expectant mothers that this is something to look out for? I feel like one of the things that has to be done is the couple and perhaps even the extended family, the support system that forms around the mother, needs to come in for one session. I feel like it should be mandated, right? When during the course of the pregnancy, it should be mandated that this is something that could happen. Is that something that...
So there are courses for, as usual, because the mother is going to learn everything. The mother is going to. Most often it's the mother and maybe the couple, so lamas courses, etc. But one is all of this has to be done before the mom hits month 7, 8. Once I think the baby is there is just so much to handle. None of this is possible. So what I have been speaking, I was doing a set of webinars for a startup which is looking at mums and mental health and things like that. So how do you plan your baby, how do you adjust to life with the baby, and then how you go back to work. And something we said repeatedly in those webinars is learn, upskill, share that nugget with your family preemptively from the beginning. So if you don't want visitors right away, if you want a japa or a doula to support you post birth, what sort of preferences do you have about sleeping, feeding, all of these things. See what works for you, make a plan B. Don't just share it with your partner, share it with this immediate sort of family, with the goal being that we support the sort of cocoon that the mother and child have. But what typically happens here is the child belongs to everyone, so we want to show the child to family and extended family and photos, and all of this is happening when the mother is at her most vulnerable, unable to speak, and partner may or may not advocate. So all the things that are, and these are very critical things. I may not want a photo of my child being circulated on WhatsApp groups.
Absolutely.
Right? I may not want visitors because my child has zero immunity in the first few weeks.
And as a mother who just gave birth, perhaps
I
by
don't
C-section,
want to meet people.
You're exhausted.
You're exhausted. You don't know what happened in the last few days. And at that point, when you're having to do these things, see if that aligned to you and you're feeling up for it, it's one thing. But if you're not, you should not have to fight for that. Then people have to come and ask you, how do you want to be helped? Not this is what you should be doing, this is how you should be doing stuff.
Because in essence, what it feels like is the child is born and the child belongs to everyone. And the mother, in turn, is enslaved by what other people think the child needs, right? And it is, even something... I used to get triggered by the smallest things, which would be so insignificant, like wear socks and cover your ears. They keep telling mums that. I mean, I haven't covered my ears even in peak winters, right? I'm not going to do it. But I would keep getting told that 6-7 times a day by, those who would come to visit, or even the lady who I had hired to help myself. It would drive me crazy. I
if you do that to a toddler, the toddler will scream no at you at the second time. But that time is so delicate. I feel like even we don't know what we want to say when we want to say no. Or you're in this warp, and it was very destabilizing. It was.
I would go to the bathroom, turn on the shower, and scream. Because it was so infuriating. And
mom rage is real. It is.
And they would say things like, see, you'll fall sick, and then because of you, the baby will fall sick. It'll be your fault because you're just
so
not
all the fault
wearing
very
a scarf.
Obviously is yours, and the good things are because the baby is a magical baby, and I do think, because you were asking, is the situation really this grim? I do think of what all of this would feel like if the mother was at the center. If you held onto the center and gave it the support, how would things spiral out? If you give them that initial time, and then you open up life, and then you sort of even helping in a way that feels helpful, rather than I can't say no because this is how things are. This is how things are is how we perpetuate any cycle, status quo. So
I mean that should be the uniform in India. I think this is how things
this
are.
This is how things are.
I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt and it'll be up for sale soon. How do you, we spoke about PPD, but how do you as a person and a therapist deal with your own personal life, all the strife that you may have experienced. How do you deal with it when you're constantly on the other end of a screen listening to people's problems and the stresses that they have in their life? How do you unwind? How do you turn off?
So I've been asked this question very, very, very often. For whatever reason, I don't feel very, very stressed by my job. Like I can't tell you how much I mean this. It feels very aligned. I really like connecting with people at that depth. I think before I started doing this, I think I would expect that depth from other relationships, friends, family, etc. But this has probably directed it to a place where I can use it very, very well. So I don't find my job stressful. I find having to do my job, like everything else in life, sort of should take care of itself. It'll happen somehow, no plans, no planning. That is the stuff. That chaos gets to me, which I think is true of every professional, right? The work is something maybe you like to do, but it's having to do all of these other things. I come from a home where there's been a lot of illness and chronic sort of health issues. So a part of me is always prepping for something to happen there. Now, how do I deal with these things? One is I try to take exceptional care of my time. I treat my time as sacrosanct. So I know who I'm giving it to and why. And something I really realized with having my son is, if work is not happening for whatever reason, when I'm with him, I try to be with him. And when work is happening, even if he's really unwell or crying, I have to see to it that there is help who can take care of him, because I can't go there because someone could be crying on the call in front of me, and that is also very, very critical.
And you can't be interrupted.
I can't be interrupted. And thankfully, I have a support system close by that understands that when I close that door, when I come out is when we open it. You can't knock for things, because I want to give when I've come back from work, I have to give my clients that much, right? So one is protecting my time. Two, I think, is whatever fuels you. So something that I used to do all the time is get out of the city and walk in all these places, travel, read books. Wherever I can, I'm still trying to do that. Reading has taken a huge backseat, and it is really telling on how I'm doing mental health wise, I think, because it was something that you would do and you would feel centered in. It mattered to me. It's deeply restorative, and now it's not happening. So if something is good, not doing it is bad. But I do make sure I walk. We travel quite a bit still. I think having a sense of when you're at capacity, like is it feeling like things are getting too much, then you have to take a hard pause and say no to some things. So that's one other thing. I also see to it that I will not shy away from saying that I've been on medication when I've needed it, I've been in therapy, so I need spaces where I can pour out. And if I feel like I need the help of whatever thing it is to keep me stable and grounded, I will do it on a war footing, because now I have, apart from all this, a toddler who will depend on me. So whatever centers and holds you, that's that. I spend a lot of time with my immediate family, mom, sister, dog, friends. I don't meet a lot of people, but I do a lot of stuff in depth. So I feel like that really
quality
fuels,
over quantity. And I got another t-shirt idea while we were talking. My time is sacrosanct.
Yes.
Again, it's going to be up for sale for all mothers. I think that's a great sentence. Tell me, this is something I always wonder about. How does, when you become a parent, you also become a co-parent, and I find that is also an equally challenging part, right? Because there's always this sense of push and pull and all of that. Does being a psychologist, a trained psychologist who's driven by empathy, does it help make you a better co-parent?
Not at all. I think actually the lack of empathy is what I needed there, because I tend to take this. I think I would originally take a high road and say, okay, this is like this, I will wait it out, etc. My husband and I worked very well as a team up until the baby happened, I think. Like I said, we survived COVID in 3 different cities, so we thought we knew what we would do. But one is, we realized nobody knew what would work. Like, it was like chaos. Like, there's one day when my son just cried till 5 in the morning. We don't even know what worked, and we had to get up at 6 because we had to go back to the hospital for some vaccination or something. We're like, okay, this is just life now, is it? In the beginning, it wasn't so bad till I started work, honestly, because all you had to do was play with your baby, get them to feed and sleep.
Yes.
I was like, this is like mom life honeymoon, where he sleeps, I read a book, and all stuff.
I've never
is
heard
great.
that term before. I think it was your degree that helped you figure that out.
I really enjoyed it because I was reading all the time. If he slept, I was reading. I would have to do just little things around the house. And I didn't mind the sleep loss too much because I'm not a great sleeper anyway. So it was all like beautiful. Then at month 4, I started going back to work little by little. I started with very few clients, but by April, when he turned 6 months, I was almost back to work, and I was also liking it. I felt like, wow, this part of my brain is still intact. I didn't lose it in the whole process. I was like, okay, great. And then I realized, okay, it's not the same. You can't work, nanny doesn't show up, don't have a cook, something or the other, or your child gets sick, which they do all the time.
Yes.
Here, and I was like, okay, then I started to really lose it. It was not really, but by which time my husband's work had also picked up whatever time off he had gone. It's messy, but it's worth fighting about. I think it also takes fathers some time to realize how much autonomy and free time will be sacrificed on this altar. That's one thing. Like, my husband really struggled, I think, with socializing.
Yes.
That's something that's very important to him. But, he would just have to come back home on a day when my son is sick or something like that. So that part was really difficult. I think what also happened is, with a long-term sort of relationship, we've been together forever. So you can take some things about each other for granted.
Right.
And you tend to attribute the misgivings more generously. I lost all the generosity postpartum. I was like, nothing I have left to give anyone.
Yes.
So you better show up. Which, I understand why I felt like that. I will say that, that's just how it came up. But I think in time, I also started giving some capacity, some focus back to our relationship. And I think that whole roommates phase went on for a while. And I think it's really credit to him. He would keep planning these tiny breaks. And on one of those breaks, my son went to sleep, and we were like, wow, we are awake.
Yeah.
And now we can actually talk like two adults in the hotel room. And I think that was the first time we did in forever.
Yeah.
And so it's not about putting you first or the child first or the marriage first, whatever is feasible whenever. But I think you have to expect some messy conversation, some amount of projecting, some amount of blame. It is going to happen. But I think maybe as the child becomes more independent, I don't know if it will settle. But that's it. I don't think this is ever a 50-50. I think setting a goal like that is causing a lot of mums more grief. I've had so many mums, people I went to college with, saying, I have just told myself that if my husband is the breadwinner, then although I worked or I taught or I still teach, more of this is mine to do. I think, it's not about whether you're a feminist, whether you're not a feminist, what do you become if you're not a feminist, am I sort of, those labels have made all of us a little bit more charged about this.
Yes.
But I do want to say that even if it's imperfect, it works for me. It's a vehicle that's moving. So on a day when I'm not able to get him to sleep, if I come out, my husband will switch immediately and get my son to sleep. Or if he's not well or something, he will take care of him. He will take him for a shot if I can't go.
Yeah.
But you have to be clear about what you need and how you can match that with what help is available.
It's not a one size fits all.
At all.
And I think sometimes you tend to begrudge your partner, for what they have, and you feel like, you have so much lesser, whether it's time
especially
or whatever.
Time. So I don't know if you've heard of unicorn space. Unicorn space is the time that each partner has to do something that only counts to them. So it could be exercise for someone, it could be mindless TV watching, it could be gaming for a dad. And that unicorn space, mind you, already is non-existent for maybe mums of our generation. Maybe they get like a nap and they read a book or something. But for us, I think it was something we had carved out very sacredly. Like someone has a gym routine, somebody has something they like to do. So that going away brought in so much resentment. Like, you are going out to watch a movie?
Yeah.
Right? And a friend of mine is like, okay, you have work travel and that's it, and I'm going to be here. And you cannot help that feeling. Nobody is being petty or transactional. It's just too big a skew. And none of us a lot of us who are first time mums in our 30s, etc., I hadn't really seen a baby in my immediate circle up until then. And the skew that it is when our parents' time, existed and things happened that way, we don't remember, we've not seen. And there was no questioning and agonizing about it. I think the questioning and agonizing is very relevant, very required, because unless you push it, it will always be that way, because patriarchy thrives on the unpaid labor of women.
And it thrives in spaces where it's not spoken of as loudly. And also when we encountered how our parents' relationships may have been imbalanced, we were adults, so we approach it with a different mindset, as in from when you are dealing with it, having lived your life in a way where
and truth be said, I want my marriage to perhaps be better. I want it to be more equal or collaborative or whatever,
more reflective of who you are as a person.
We are as people, and it takes some amount of foolish bravery to create that, which means you have the same fights again and again. And I think something that, there's this whole conversation about fair play, and this lawyer called Eve Rodsky who talks about this whole thing, right? So she says that men always complain that when you give me something to do, you can't tell me what to do and how to do it as well, right? So when we delegate, if we tend to be perfectionistic about stuff.
Micromanaging is my middle name.
So I realized that, sometimes, maybe I may not give my child screen time, but then, my son and my husband will be watching cricket on mute or watching animal videos and something, and that's okay. It's not the world's worst thing. I think this gets very, very intense if you want to do everything right the whole time.
That I'm going to take that as a lesson back home today and let my husband do the things he does with my child when they're hanging out together. I feel like I have so many more questions for you. I think we should do a part 2 of this very soon. But I know you've been here at MPL, which is of course Meet, Play, Live, which is where we are recording and meeting. It is an entrepreneurial and networking hubs for mums to come together and meet and speak with other mums. And at the MPL tea time is where I met you. What was your experience like? It's where mums get together to chat about their experience.
So I'll tell you why I dragged myself here the first time. I spent all of the last year at home. Then I saw this message that Shivaldi had put on the group, and when I started life in Jan 1st was abysmal for me. So I told myself, you know what, I am going to get out of the house with my son or without my son, but I'm going to get out of the house. And this location is beautiful for me. It's walkable from home. It sounded safe. And it's only when I came here I realized how safe the space is for a child, because my son has been coming here from the time he was that many months old. And I've come for several meetups. It's amazing that this is what community would be if you could take it for granted, but of course we don't have those systems, so we have to build it, right? And I've met a whole bunch of mums here, and every time I come, maybe we're speaking about different parts of the same elephant, but that is the elephant in the room. It is the the labor of raising a child, the multiple roles, the whole bunch of fine resentments that women carry, but then they also ignore because you have to do life. And I think that's what I meant, right? Everybody who needs help does not need to go to therapy. You want to, you as a process for you, of course you can, but help did not have to be so long-winded to reach. It could just be that a bunch of mums meet together and chat. But unfortunately in our lives it does not happen unless something like this comes up. Right? And then I think each time I leave feeling like my shoulders are lighter, or I've dropped my shoulders, you've laughed a bit, you've seen that your child can actually interact with other kids, and these are things that you would probably see more easily earlier because people had like kitty parties or family gatherings, etc. But it does not happen in that same way for us. And also very, very safe because no one else knows of this space in that same way. So you know that you're only going to meet a place which is inhabited by mums like you. So it's a very safe group sort of a feeling.
What I love about the tea time at MPL is that, there are mums who are at different stages of their lives. Someone who's just had a baby, someone who has a 19-year-old. And it feels sort of therapeutic almost to listen to all of those experiences and say, okay, you know what, I'll figure it out, and if I need help, there's always someone to turn to, and it's highly beneficial for mums to meet, even if it's just mindless conversations. I feel there's such a sense of connection and
I think
community.
the lack of agenda is actually the beautiful thing, because you're doing things like that all the time. And so when you just come and exist in this space, it's there is something very holding about it.
The tea and the conversations are warm and comforting. Okay, before I let you go, I want your recommendations, Shoma. Something you've watched recently that you loved, something you read that you loved. I feel like you may have a lot of those, or maybe even a podcast, or all three.
Right. I saw Adolescence, and you have to sometimes watch things that shake you up a bit.
Yes.
Also for the beautiful direction, but really realizing I have a boy. I don't know what it is like to raise a girl. I will never know. But of course, you think of how you can bring gentleness in. How do you make space so that my child does not have to fight his way back to access his vulnerability. We do a lot of I love you and hugs and cuddles and all of that. I they boo, according to him, is I love you. So, I they boo, he says. But it really sets you up to sort of understand what is the task that lies ahead. And what do we want to embody as parents. How much of men's emotional labor, it's called hermeneutic labor, that women do, because in the show there's son who's of course gone and he's responsible for a murder, and the father's fighting the battle, but you realize that it's actually the mum and the sis who are keeping it together even in those conditions. So Adolescence is one. I also really enjoyed this Japanese show called Midnight Diner. I think we've become very used to watching quick content, but Midnight Diner is very beautifully shot. A lot is unsaid. So I noticed myself actually paying attention to the way the details are sort of put out there, but you have to catch it. So I love that. It's about a man who runs a diner from 12 to 7 in Tokyo, 12 to 7 at night in Tokyo, and all the people who come and their own stories, very centered on the lived experience of those people. So I love that.
Sounds great.
With regard to books, because we're talking therapy, I think maybe you should talk to someone by Laurie Gottlieb. This is something I always ask people to read, only for the sense of how relatable it is, how human it shows you that your therapists also are, that they also have lives and similar things could be happening for them, that we are not you and I sitting across a table, we are a collective bunch of humans feeling these things. I also really liked Bittersweet by Susan Cain. It's one of my favorite books. A lot of us deal with this feeling that I feel too much all the time, and not just girls, boys. It's just some of us have always felt like I'm sensitive to time a certain way, I'm sensitive to ends and beginnings a certain way, I feel losses differently, and the world doesn't feel that, or even if they feel, they don't let that on. It's only when I read Bittersweet that I felt so held and validated, because she talks of how sadness is not a bad thing. In fact, sadness is a superpower. You're meant to feel your sadness because messages emerge from there. It could sound a little morbid to some, but I felt like I was so validated by that book.
That sounds beautiful, actually.
So, because you're speaking of podcasts, I think Susan Cain appears on a Brené Brown episode of Unlocking Us, where she's actually talking about this. So any podcast from that series, it's called Unlocking Us. That's really nice. There are many others, but I haven't gone back to listening to anything at night. The minute my child sleeps, I want to do something mindless, do my laundry and then crash. So podcasts don't happen anymore.
Okay, Shoma, that was so enlightening talking to you. I really enjoyed it, and I am threatening to do a part 2 with you because I still have so many questions, and we will speak soon. But before I let you go, one quick thing. If you were an Instagram pop psychology page, what is the one line you would leave everyone with as a psychologist?
After me, you come first.
Wow.
That's not original. It's from a book, but I really think, like, when I feel like, my people-pleasing part and my authentic part and mom body which has zero capacity, and you have to say yes to a gathering but you don't want to. I really sort of think of, okay, where am I at? And on some days if I really have to say no, that is the part of me that will say, after me, whatever you need. So earlier I probably would help people a lot more on default. Now I'm like, what, I have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to help you do something? No
Yeah,
way.
wow. So I feel like you have a second career already lined up. Great lines to sell t-shirts. After me, you come first. That's the
Print
thought.
on demand.
Yes, that's the thought Shoma and I are going to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on Invisible Work. And as always, moms, take care of yourself, and we'll catch you in another episode very soon. Thank you, Shoma.
Thank you, Anjana. This was wonderful.